we're here to master 3D. We're not here to ascend beyond our physical body. We're here to integrate it. And again, it's like you can't really graduate from, third dimension until you master it. So that's sort of my belief around there. As far as timeline, who knows? I mean, it could be 100 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 1,000 years, hundred thousands of years. I think when we worry about it is when we are distracted from the work at hand.
Welcome to the Healing Cocoon. I'm Jacoby Gray, soul alignment and success coach and energy healer, which means I can intuit the subtle layers of your energy field to promote ultimate health and well-being. My goal for this podcast is to shed light on the healing journey itself and help you feel more supported as you embark on the process of unpacking your past to consciously create your present and start living the life of your dreams. Through the study of coaching, kinesiology, holographic kinetics, meditation, Reiki, the chakra system, and many other modalities, I've learned how to release the blocks that were holding me back. Now I'd love to help you do the same. By embarking on your own self-healing process, you'll see the world transforming around you in ways you never thought possible. You'll begin to experience more connection, clarity, love, fulfillment, synchronicity, and success than you've ever had before. So welcome to the Ascension. Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the next episode of the Healing Cocoon podcast. I am your host, Jacoby Gray, and today we're talking with Chelsea Jeheber, and I'm really excited about this chat because we get to go deep on some pretty hardcore spiritual stuff. So we're talking Palladians, Lemurians, 3D versus 5D, and all of these concepts may be quite new to some people if you've just sort of begun your healing journey, and I don't want to make the assumption that everybody believes that their healing journey is a spiritual journey, but what does tend to happen as you start to heal and you come back into a state of wholeness, you also come back into a state of oneness, and through that oneness you open up to whatever form of spirituality serves you. So that could be religion, it could be like me, like believing in all of these interdimensional realities. It's whatever serves you, but ultimately healing is wholeness and wholeness is oneness. So with that preface, let's get into the episode. We're talking with Chelsea, and she's actually the founder of She Makes Bank. So Chelsea is an intuitive channel and I guess spiritual guide plus entrepreneur, and she helps other conscious entrepreneurs and newbie business owners launch and run their own purpose-led businesses. And Chelsea's own journey, she stepped into her gifts in her 20s, and through that process ended up creating an online business. And while she was doing the typical sessions of, I guess, channeling interdimensionals for people who were seeking advice for the typical things around love and money, there were other people who were coming to her, generally spiritually based business owners, who were coming to her asking questions around, how do I run a spiritual business? And Chelsea saw a gap in the market there and also felt quite called to start shifting her own business from just being a channel into helping, I guess, these consciously based businesses evolve and expand, and essentially empowering women to make money and empower more women, which I'm all for. So it's a really juicy chat, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know in the DMs. Well, in the Urban Ascension DMs. I'm not across the Healing Cocoon podcast DMs. I had to kind of like make a choice there about which DMs I was going to service. So Urban Ascension DMs, but definitely drop comments on any of the episode posts that you see on our Instagram. It's the Healing Cocoon podcast. And without further ado, Chelsea Jeheber. I was reading on your website, I was thinking, how do I explain to people what a cosmic channel is? And this is what I kind of found, and then I'd love you to kind of extrapolate on that. But a cosmic channel means that you channel messages from light beings of a higher consciousness for the healing and spiritual advancement of humanity. and now the strategic and professional advancement of individuals, I guess, moving into like conscious business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm not saying I coined the term, but when I kind of thought like, am I an intuitive channel? I mean, there's angelic channels, there's so many different variations. And I was like, well, what do I really do? And I really do. I talk to ETs and light entities outside of this sort of planet. So yeah.
That's really cool. So can we go back to the beginning? Was this something, were you born with this gift, or was this something that awakened? And was there some kind of huge awakening moment for you, a deep healing that had to occur in order to access these gifts? Tell me a bit about how this came online for you.
I never really worked with my gifts or thought of myself as as psychic until I was about 28 or 29. I'm 34 now. But my parents tell me when I started doing this work, my nanny told me like I'm an adult. I still don't have a nanny, but she messaged me and she's like, I remember when you were 2 or 3 and you're laying on the kitchen table telling everyone that you're from Mars, and you would tell each of us what planet we were from. And she just was like, it feels very much like it's tying all in. And I remember I could feel things as a child, just really, I'm like, there's something else in this room, not scared, but I had that sense that there was a whole different world going on, but I just didn't know how to sort of conceptualize it. But basically, I was very lost. I was a party girl. I mean, if I was a celebrity, I would have been hanging out with Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan in the early 2000s. Like I was just that type of girl.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
I think we all went through that phase.
Yeah. I'm like, it's fun till it's not fun anymore. But, and I started just healing on the physical level. So I started eating cleaner, drinking less, no more party drugs, running, that type of thing. And I feel like that really helped me prepare for the spiritual aspect, even though I didn't know that was coming. And so I actually had my spiritual awakening in Australia. I moved from California to Australia. And it's like, as soon as I hit the land, something inside of me just opened up, and I just started having psychic experiences, ghost experiences, but positive ones, where I just could tell, like I would wake up and there'd be spirit standing over my bed watching me in a loving way, but also creepy. And so I just thought, I need to explore what this is. And again, even at this point, I didn't think, oh, I'm psychic or I'm intuitive. I just didn't really even know those terms. I didn't know what a channel was. And I just started following the breadcrumbs, Googling a lot of stuff, and then heard about the Palladians, and that kind of felt like a deep knowing. And so I just kept unraveling the yarn, so to speak.
So much to unpack there. First of all, for our listeners, who or what are the Palladians?
The Palladians are light beings. They're kind of like our cosmic cousins, or like cool aunt and uncles. They're just a little bit farther down in their ascension process. They live, I mean, there's an entire sort of cosmic ecosystem called the Pleiades star system, and there's thousands of planets within that. So it's not like they come from one planet, but more one section of when we look up into the sky. They have ascended to a fifth dimensional reality or higher. And so they kind of know what it's like to be in a third and fourth dimensional reality. And so they like to offer us guidance and sort of words of advice, I guess is the best way to put it. So a lot of people will have a deep connection to the Palladians for that purpose of transmitting messages from them or guidance to help make Earth a little bit easier.
We could really use that right now.
I mean, we're like, a lot of people are like, why don't they come down and save us? I'm like, bro, you did not come down to Earth to be saved. I'm sorry, but that's just not how it works.
A little bit disappointing to hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, they want us to be empowered and sort of, they don't really view it as we need to be saved, but they want us to be empowered to create the shifts on our own. I mean, that's how you learn. You don't jump from being a toddler to an adult. You go through all those beautiful periods and, like in puberty and whatnot, to really understand what it means to be a human, So it's the same thing on our growing scale.
Yeah. And so you talked about different dimensions, and on Earth, we're in the third dimension, and you're saying that the Pleiades are on the sixth or seventh dimension?
Yeah, I feel like they start at a fifth, and it can go up. So it's not like they're only condensed to one dimensional reality. It's kind of hard to explain because time's not linear for them. So I feel like there's just so much for us that we wouldn't even be able to put into words, in human words. But I see them as a collective consciousness that starts at a fifth dimensional reality, so that frequency, and then kind of expands outward. But I wouldn't see them as it's hard to put it. It's like there are entities that are at a higher frequency, but there's no hierarchy. It's just more of a choice. Once you get to a fifth dimensional reality, it's like for the soul process and purpose of growth, it's like, what do we want to experience now?
Yeah, okay. And so there is a lot of talk right now in the spiritual circles about 5D reality and flipping from 3D to 5D. And I'm always curious about, well, that fourth dimension, which I think is where people are starting to wake up to spirit, am I right? And they're starting to experience both the light and the dark. And we move through that awakening field into a 5D consciousness. What are your thoughts, and how far away do you think we all are on our healing journey into making that shift as a collective consciousness from 3D into 5D?
It is so, okay. So I had a session where this question was asked, and they don't give exact answers. They're kind of giving riddles because they don't want to give too much. They just want to give breadcrumbs. But I think, and this might upset people, but I think a lot of people believe after this lifetime that we're all just going to go to 5D. And they asked this particular client, they're like, well, what if you don't? And she's like, well, then what's the point? And they're like, there's the lesson, there's the growth. So the Palladians are hundreds of thousands of human years ahead of us. I'm not trying to dictate a specific timeline, but I think it takes a little more time than we think. But things could also move faster. I think what's probably more beneficial is to not worry so much about being more 5D, or it's to me, it feels like the same as saying I'm trying to be more enlightened. It's that kind of feeling for me. And so I think so many people, I've had clients where they're like, I'm being more 5D and like I'm in this fifth dimensional reality. I'm like, dude, I just saw you troll someone on Facebook. I think it's best to worry less about the fifth dimensional reality because it's sort of, what's that cliche thing? It's like, it's the journey, it's not the destination. And I think it's a nice distraction. I think it's an easy way to escape, to be like, oh, we're just going to go to this better place. My firm belief is we came down here to really master the third dimension and little bit of the fourth dimension, whatever that means. But we're here to master 3D. We're not here to ascend beyond our physical body. We're here to integrate it. And again, it's like you can't really graduate from, third dimension until you master it. So that's sort of my belief around there. As far as timeline, who knows? I mean, it could be 100 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 1,000 years, 100,000s of years. I think when we worry about it is when we are distracted from the work at hand.
Yeah, so the whole purpose of being in this 3D realm is to master the 3D realm, and the idea of the 5D is to give us some understanding of where we're going, perhaps to help enlighten us in the 3D, but maybe we'll never escape it as long as we're an earthling.
Yeah, maybe Earth is just always meant to be a third dimensional reality. I mean, there's so much we don't really understand, but I think what's beautiful about, it's like how 5D is such a big cultural phenomenon, at least in the spiritual world. I think it's powerful to think, well, what is the fifth dimensional reality defined by? It's defined by unity and no more separation, no more titles. So, I mean, we're human. This isn't like bashing anyone, but think about someone, it's like they find out they're a Palladian starseed and then they change all their Instagram and social media profile to Palladian starseed. And I'm like, well, okay, that's a title. So that's creating separation, which is actually taking you farther away. I'm doing quotes, but farther away from that fifth dimensional reality. So we're humans. We love titles. We love being able to have a separate identity. And so that's what we're trying to understand and work through, which will take us closer to a fifth dimensional reality.
Well said. So
Thanks.
tracking back in your journey then, was there, you were a party girl. What was there a defining moment where you decided to get clean? Was there a trauma? Not, you don't necessarily have to divulge, but were you at a low point, or what was the inspiration to actually clean up your life? Was that an inner calling, do you think, just back to the gifts you were born with?
I just felt so shitty all the time. I could tell you the low point. The low point was, it was my 28th birthday, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and someone handed me a tab of acid, and I didn't think twice. I just took it, and acid lasts for like 12 to 15 hours. And so that was just like a whole separate thing. But I remember waking up. So my birthday is December 18th. So this was like a couple days before Christmas. And I just was like, who does that? Like, who just like does that knowing that there's going to be these consequences for, 12, 15 hours. And I just had this aha moment of just, I am so far from myself. I'm so far from my joy. I have no idea who I am. And I just kind of made this conscious decision that I can have everything I want and desire. I can live a fuller life. I have this awareness too. I mean, obviously, most people who use drugs are using them to escape. And I just was like, what am I escaping from? So I just started following that path, basically. At the time, I really had no idea it would take me to where I am today. No idea. I just thought, I just want to be healthy and not feel so bad all the time.
And sometimes that's enough, isn't it? That first step.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the way you said, I just consciously decided that I would step into a much more abundant life. And sometimes it can be as simple as making that decision, and then the steps that unfold from that point. And obviously there was quite a few steps before you touched down in Australia, but I was really interested when you said that's when your gifts came online. And do you think there is, because there's such a spiritual world with the dream time and the Aboriginal culture in Australia, do you think there's part of that activated you?
I believe so. I haven't personally or specifically seen past lives yet on Australia, but the land, I've always, when I think about it too, as a small child, I don't know if you guys had this cartoon in Australia, but it's called Rescuers Down Under. And it's like these little mice that are like cartoon mice. I don't know. But I loved it. And for me, I remember any visual I think of that movie is just the Australian landscape. I mean, it's a great movie. Highly recommend. It's a cartoon. But I just was like obsessed with that movie and kind of like all things Australian as a little kid. I just loved like the idea of a boomerang. I mean, I know that's so cheesy, but there's just little qualities where, I mean, think about how many countries are in the world. And I just was like, attracted to Australia. So I think there just is maybe some past life recognition here. People always tell me, maybe it was you that told me, it's like there's a strong Palladian connection here as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's something to do with that. And the land masses themselves, I think there's like a Lemuria connection as well. It feels like it's just a number of things. But the land, when I see like that red soil, I'm like, oh, I'm home.
Wow, that's beautiful. When you finally find where you belong and you're activated in that space, it's really empowering.
I just want to say too, my astrocartography is really good in Australia too for this lifetime. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but those are it's your astrology, but based on land markers on the planet.
The lay of the land. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interrupting this awesome chat to quickly tell you all about the free meditation I've created for peace, presence, and empowerment. It kind of sounds like a big promise, but when you break it down, a sense of inner peace comes from being present because you're not feeling anxious about the past or worried about the future. You're simply with this moment here, right now. And empowerment is also a byproduct of presence, because what's the one similarity you notice about the people in your life who have the confidence to ask for what they need and want, not in a pushy or narcissistic way, but in a way that feels genuine, clear, and unattached to the outcome of their ask, which ultimately then makes you more receptive to fulfilling their needs and wants. That's true empowerment. And that one similarity that all those people have in common is presence. So, this meditation is designed to give you a repeatable experience of presence so that you can begin integrating those feelings of peace and empowerment into your everyday life. I'd love for you to try it out, ideally 2 to 3 times a week for a month. I know it's a commitment, but you've got this. And let me know what starts shifting for you once you do. So pop onto our website, thehealingcocoon.co, that's C-O, not .com, and download your free audio track right now.
Yeah, I still quite haven't done mine yet, but maybe I should. I'm trying to figure out where I belong right now, which continent. So it could be a good time to look into that.
Perfect for it. Yes.
Yeah. So you just mentioned Lemuria. And I think a lot of people I don't want to make any assumptions, but people potentially have heard about Atlantis. Lemuria is kind of like one step along in that chain, I guess, of when you dive down the rabbit hole. Could you explain a little bit about what these lost cities or ancient places are?
Yeah, as far as I know, so I only share what I've been shown. I try not to Google too much, at least not anymore, but I just see them as ancient civilizations. I mean, very ancient, that were on their way to doing something great. And then how I see it is the collective of Earth and everyone who's in charge of Earth was kind of like, we're not there yet for the human consciousness. And so they pulled back, meaning the ascension and growth process. Also trial and error. I mean, Earth is all about trial and erroring, and we've seen that so many times, but they're basically very advanced spiritually and technologically societies that eventually collapsed because things weren't working out. So I know from what I've seen with Atlantis, the fall was they became so advanced in technology that it became almost into the wounded masculine of just really trying to, I wouldn't even know because they haven't shown me, but just kind of what I understand when they showed me images, it just, the fall of that society was because they were too focused on like power and that type of thing.
And then it's a little bit unnerving because I feel like that's potentially what's happening right now.
I know, that's what made me really uncomfortable when they showed me. I was like, so yeah, it made me feel really uncomfortable as well. But then again, it's like, I'm not 100% sure. It's just when they showed me, they're like, oh, it was a lot of things. And I mean, we've seen this with it's been seen kind of throughout the cosmos as well. It's just when there's like too much power and it becomes too unbalanced into the wounded masculine. I'm not sure what the collapse looked like. I'm like, what do you mean collapse? Like, does this happen all at once? Or like, is it a slow demise? So I get that though. I'm like, feels like we're here again. So
yeah,
I will say we're not as spiritually as advanced as they were. To me, it felt like it was light entities incarnated on Earth, where we're more, I mean, we're humans. I mean, we are light beings to our core, but yeah, not sure.
I wonder if we become an ancient civilization that ultimately was the cause of its own demise. I wonder what we'll be referred to, the Earthlings?
Yeah, well, yeah, it'd be just like a marker. And the thing too that my guides have showed me, they're like, when we think about Atlantis, I don't know the exact timeline, but let's say Atlantis was 10,000 years ago. They were like, they make fun of me because it's like humans, we get so focused. They're like, that wasn't the only thing going on at that time. That was just one, community or society. I was like, oh, really? They're like, yes, there was a ton of other civilizations doing their thing as well.
On different planets or on Earth?
On Earth. Well, when we think of Atlantis, it was just one continent that, as I see it, went below water for whatever reason. But they're like, there was the rest of Earth doing Earth things. And they're like, they all survived. I was like, oh yeah, okay, so we're good. Like, well.
And what about Lemuria? What was its downfall?
I'm not sure if it had a downfall. They've shown me, the Lemurians were like, can I cuss? They were like,
absolutely.
They're like, fuck this. Earth is gonna go through some shit. We're just gonna do our own thing and not do Earth. that's like literally the most basic explanation, because sometimes they'll only show me images, so I just have to decipher the images through my own translation system. That was kind of the vibe where they're like, I'm not sure about this, so maybe we'll back out. What have you heard about Lemuria?
Look, I don't know a whole heap about it, other than that it is another ancient civilization with light beams. But I wonder, when you say, okay, we're backing out of Earth, like, what does that look like? How does an entire civilization remove themselves from planet Earth, and where do they exist now?
Yeah, I mean, there's people that say they went into, what's that, Mount Shasta, and I think it's in California. They all went into the mountain.
Like, you know what? I'm going to pay Mount Shasta a visit.
Yeah. So like they went and became like mole people. I mean, that's like a crude way to say it, but I wonder that too. I'm like, do you guys just all fail at the same time? And again, that might not even be the right translation, but it felt more like Atlantis had a fall and Lemuria decided a different route. And I think this is all connected to whoever's in charge of Earth, and just kind of like watching all of us players play out our roles and kind of seeing all the different timelines at play and figuring out what's best and what's going to work out and what's not.
So, I mean, to that point, we're at a bit of a crisis point, it feels like, on planet Earth. We've got the COVID pandemic, where we've got the impending doom and science of, global warming and climate change. But there are people like you on the planet who have access to higher information, and you're here to be a channel. How do you think we're meant to interpret that? And what do you feel your purpose is through sharing that?
I feel like everything we've been going through these last couple of years and the next few years to come is really the universe just shaking that dirty old rug, and all the dust is flying around and coming to the surface, and now we have to face everything. I don't feel as doom and gloom about it as everyone else, but I do, especially that movie that just came out.
Don't Look Up. I'm obsessed with it. I cried my eyes out. I was devastated for humanity, but there was also hope inside me, because I was like, someone made that film. Someone sees, and everybody who watches that will have a seed of knowing implanted in their consciousness, whether they understand the full depth of that film or not. But sorry, keep going. I'm just excited.
No, but that's like, my partner and I were just talking about it, how there was people. So I'm saying like, oh, it's hard. I don't buy into the doom and gloom, but then, I see people arguing, basically perpetuating the same ideas and themes in that film, but they're arguing about the film. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys, not to say like they missed it, because who knows what they think, but I just was like, oh shit, we're in trouble, because the people are literally doing the same shit in the movie about the actual movie. It was weird, like, moment.
It's like an inception moment, isn't it?
It was. It just, and I just imagine the writer director is probably just like cracking up, because I'm sure he knew. I'm sure he was like, people are gonna do exactly what we say in the film. So from that perspective, I'm like, oh shucks, we really need to. It's hard. So as a society, as I see all great civilizations outside of Earth are very highly technologically advanced. I mean, just crazy advanced. So, when people say like, oh, we need to get rid of social media or the internet or technology and just be living in the trees or whatever, like, that sounds really great. But if we really do want to advance, like, technology is going to be there, whether we like it or not. It's just integrating it in a healthy and balanced and aligned way. I kind of lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Suddenly I was about to ask you about AI, and then I went, okay. We need to there's so much to talk about. And also, when you mentioned previously past lives, and I wanted to touch on that as well, I'm wondering, how many people out there are even able to track along with this. So I'm trying to pick up all the pieces and give explanations as we go, because otherwise you and I could rabbit on about this forever.
Well, this is like what we do too. It's like we just go through so many different rabbit holes. I'm like, I forgot what we were even talking about. But
think
So
we've covered a lot.
We have covered a lot. And I think, though, I did want to come back to past lives. And I know that you've been accessing the akashic records for a long time, but have sort of recently explored that with people as an individual offering, separate to being a cosmic channel. And I guess people will say, well, what's the difference? So first of all, what is different between channeling the akashic records versus channeling, say, the Andromedans or the Palladians?
So if I were to open your records, it would be information for you, from you, meaning from your higher self. So from the perspective of every incarnation that you have lived and possibly will live, and your higher self and your soul, because it's your records. So it's from your perspective. When I am channeling, say, the Andromedans or Palladians, we as living creatures, whether we're ETs or humans or whatever it may be, we can only share from our perspective. And so that's why we go to the Palladians and ask for help, but their word is not bond. And I tell people in the beginning of channeling sessions, I'm like, just because they say this doesn't mean they know all. They know more, but they're only speaking from their perspective, from their own experiences. So that to me is more the difference. They can tap in to your energy field and your consciousness, of course, and be able to tap into what is the most aligned answer or message for you. But that would just be the overall difference. Is it's from the perspective of you as like your fullest essence, or the perspective of a higher being who has just lived more, quote unquote, more life than you.
More expanded life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for someone who's going through their healing journey, what would be the benefit of them having an akashic record reading and reaching back into their past lives?
I think if you are an individual where you're noticing patterns, things that keep repeating themselves, and you really can't get to the root of it or really understand, and you kind of want a more bird's eye view understanding of whatever those patterns or issues may be in your life that are repeating, that would really benefit you to get an akashic record reading with an actual reader. But you can read your records yourself. So if you're like, where should I move, or should I leave my job? Kind of more basic questions where it's kind of like you might even know the answer, but you just want some extra guidance. I find then you can read your own records as well for that. I mean, you can read your records for the tougher stuff as well if you're a little more advanced. But I would say it's just really about getting on a deeper level with what's going on in your life and what's repeating in your life.
Okay, so I guess the next question everybody's going to have is, how do I read my own records?
There are so many different prayers out there. Linda Howe is a good place to start. I believe she has a couple books, which I read. I just self-taught for the Akashic records, but I also had been working with my psychic gifts for a while, so I knew how the shift would feel in my body personally. I also believe that you can kind of just sit down and set the intention that you want to open your records, and you would want to get into a almost trance-like state. So getting in a meditative state and grounding and clearing your energy field. I like to see myself floating up into the cosmos and then kind of into this beautiful library. And then from there, just asking your question, why am I having issues in my relationship? Or why is my boss being so mean to me? Or why do I continue to have the same struggles with money? I mean, love and money, career, those are the top issues that we all kind of go to. It will be up to you to figure out how you receive messages. So we all have our, how many clairs are there?
5. I mean, I think there's 5 main ones, isn't there?
Yeah. So it's like maybe you'll hear something, and by hearing, some people actually do hear, but I think when we say hearing or seeing, it's within your mind's eye. So, if you ever get a song stuck in your head, that's how it will kind of sound with the hearing. It's like just a memory of something you've heard before. And the same with sight. It's kind of like when you are thinking about what you did yesterday and the images come through, that's how the scene comes through. And then there's feeling and knowing. There's all these different clairs. So it's up to you to see, like, play around with it and say, I want to see this, or I want to hear this. Let me feel this, and kind of get in tune with how the information shows up in your body.
And I guess that ultimately that's what a healing journey is. We go through pain because we feel a sense of separation, and that separation is in our life is represented by people in our lives, but actually it's a separation from ourselves and our own soul and our higher self. And so would you say that healing is that process of realigning with the higher self, and I guess detaching from the idea that your pain is caused by someone else? But then through that process, you will start to connect, and you will start getting some kind of, whether it's sight, sound, knowingness, intuition. But as you heal, you do come into a much more complete sense of self where you can access all of those gifts naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think too, part of the healing process is moving away from the ego dance or victim consciousness and recognizing that everything that happens to you is actually happening for you. It's for your highest and greatest good. It's so hard for us to understand that when we're going through heartbreak or we are in debt or whatever it may be. But I find that that's such a really beautiful sort of cue for you've elevated to the next level, whatever that next level may be, is when you can say like, okay, what is the lesson here? How is this for me? How is this helping me gain more life lessons on earth so that I can sort of form into this highest self that wants to come through in the physical and be integrated in the physical. And then from there, it's like, as you elevate it, you're so right. It's like you open up. It's almost like you're blossoming, and that's when all the gifts come back online. We've always had the gifts. They just are dormant sometimes because that's just the process. You know, I know 19-year-olds that are like so psychic and they've been working with their gifts since they were 12. And then it's like me, mine kind of came on when I was 30. It's just, that was the right time for it.
And speaking of that process of elevation, so you awakened and then you built, you needed a way of communicating your gifts and putting yourself out there as a cosmic channel. So you built an online business to put yourself out there. And through that process of helping people, you had to learn all about being an entrepreneur. And now the next elevation for you, and the download that you got, was to step into a conscious business model and actually help people with their online businesses. Can you speak a bit about that next part of your healing journey?
Yeah, I just noticed a huge amount of my clients were coming into session, and again, like 90% of my clients are actual, like in the spiritual realm. So they're like Reiki healers or channels themselves, psychics, whatever it may be. And they would come in and ask very specific business questions. I mean, things where I'd almost have to stop channeling because I'm like, I'm not going to ask the light beings how to do a sales funnel. Like,
can you teach me how to take my business evergreen?
Yeah, like truly, they're like, so how do I do marketing? And so I'd come out and like, well, what do you mean? And, you know, as opposed to like, what's my purpose, or is this the right business career? And I just kind of noticed there's a gap in the market where, rightfully so, a lot of healers and spiritual business owners are very in their feminine. And it's hard for them to tap into that masculine worth energy to kind of move their business forward. You know, there's so much stigma out there. I mean, just without saying most women are healers, I'm not trying to do stereotypes, but you think about like the patriarchy, it's like, let's keep women down and keep them quiet and voiceless, and they can't be making, you know, millions of dollars a year. And so I've just kind of noticed how those sort of societal programming has infiltrated all of us, you know, and this is a totally different topic.
No, I get it. But ultimately, feminism is about, potentially making your own money and being empowered. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just realized how many of my clients, again, a majority of them being female, were economically disempowered, and they had these amazing gifts, but they were playing so small. I mean, there's people where I just was like, you could charge $2,000 for your sessions because you're literally like healing people. Like, they're just so powerful, but they're like, you know, charging $100 and they only see a couple clients per month. I'm like, no, you're here to help. Like, you're here to serve. And so that's sort of what I noticed is, I'm like, oh, I can easily talk about this. And I'm a projector in human design, so I can kind of see all the little details from above. And it just felt right to pivot in my business that way, from being not only a cosmic channel, because I'll still channel consciously, like do a conscious channeling in the sessions, but helping spiritual entrepreneurs grow and expand their business.
That's beautiful. And I think it's a really, like, the way your journey is tracked, I feel like is a cool representation of the actual healing journey itself, because you're moving along in an unconscious fashion with all of your vices blocking you from moving forward, and your traumas and all those things. And one day you have an awakening. So you drop acid a few days before Christmas and stay awake for like 5 days, and you go, okay, I got to clean my act up. But then you go into a process of awakening and having to face down everything. And for you, it was, receiving all of these messages and having ghosts, like friendly ghost experiences. And all of that's really wild. For someone else, that could really potentially send them crazy. But likewise, other people, they're dealing with, they're stuck in relationships that they don't want to be in, that now that they've gotten sober, they're realizing they need to leave. It's kind of like, it's your reckoning, isn't it? It's taking responsibility for your life. And so then you've gone through this process where you've stepped into your gifts and you've owned it. You've taken full responsibility for your soul's journey on the planet, and you've put that out there. And I think through that process, people do get to a point in their healing journey of empowerment. And in that place of personal empowerment, then you step into the real purpose and the real work, which is you suddenly getting that message and you're like, oh, I'm here to help recreate the balance between the masculine and feminine energy. And it's like going from that process of cleaning out your karma to stepping into your dharma.
Beautifully said.
Italian kiss.
Italian kiss. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like, is there anything that you would like to share as we wrap up the podcast today?
Honestly, girlfriend, we hit everything. This was so fun.
It was super fun. Thank you so much.
I know we could talk for like 2 hours about aliens, but that could be another.
I mean, we didn't really go into aliens, but yes, I'm sure everybody comment on this episode if you would like another episode about aliens.
Yes. I could just talk about aliens all day.
I hope this episode has inspired you to keep going on what can sometimes be a tough road to inner peace and true happiness. If you want to dive deeper into what we talked about today, go to thehealingcocoon.co for show notes and all things personal growth. And don't forget, if you're loving The Healing Cocoon, then put that love into action and subscribe, rate and review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. And until next time, my friends, let's rise and shine together.